Dick Heller was a policeman who helped to guard the federal buildings and carried a gun in order to do that. But when he wanted to have a gun at home to protect himself in his home, he wasn't allowed to do it because of Washington, D.C. is very, very strict.
District of Columbia versus Dick Heller. For the first time in 70 years, the Supreme Court is hearing a case regarding the intent of the Second Amendment and its association with gun control laws.
Plans now. First, you said earlier you felt like you'd been rejected here.
We actually had, yes.
And that's because of the semi-automatic?
And the fact that we did not bring it with us, and the fact that it was a semi-automatic, which is an issue that has not yet been totally resolved, is the reason I was rejected.
5 Morning News.
The Supreme Court takes up a hot-button issue today that is significant not only for D.C., but the entire country. It has been 31 years since private gun ownership was essentially outlawed in the District of Columbia. The High Court will hear arguments today about whether that ban violates the Second Amendment.
And then there are some people that think that guns kill people, as if they jump out of the dresser drawer and walk across the floor, walk out the front door, and start shooting at people.
To anybody else, like history is repeating itself, the economy feels like, I don't know, spring of 1929, and the debate over your gun rights feels like 1939. That's the last time the Supreme Court addressed the constitutional right to bear arms.
The U.S. Supreme Court, it might be hard to believe, but not once in the history of this republic has the court ever said what the Second Amendment's right to bear arms means.
District of Columbia versus Heller. This case is about the District of Columbia versus Dick Anthony Heller. Dick Anthony Heller tried to get a handgun permit for his handgun to keep at home, where the District of Columbia said he was not allowed unless the gun was disassembled or had a trigger lock. This case originally took place in District of Columbia, where he sued the District of Columbia for them being unconstitutional, where it went to the D.C. court, where it was denied. This case then went to the Supreme Court, where Mr. Heller was greeted by many people supporting him. Many of them with signs and flags, a lot of them with the "Do Not Tread on Me" flag, as seen here, to protect their First Amendment and Second Amendment rights. Mr. Heller had lots of support, especially for the fact he was an ex-police officer. In the Supreme Court, this case got a 5-4 ruling. The minority was really keeping to that guns kind of being not allowed unless they have a trigger lock or if they are disassembled to really get that permit. Now, the majority ruled it was unconstitutional and against the Second Amendment. And it was against the right to bear arms.
Not be unreasonably infringed instead of shall not be infringed.
There is that inherent aspect to every right in the Constitution.
So we can, consistent with your view, we can simply read this as shall not be unreasonably infringed.
Well, yes, Your Honor, to some extent, except the word unreasonable is one that troubles us because we don't know what this unreasonable standard looks like.
You wouldn't put it that way. You would just say it is not being infringed if reasonable limitations are placed upon it.
That's another way to look at it, Your Honor, sir.
This was a pretty big case for the Supreme Court, justifying the fact they haven't seen a case with the Second Amendment for a while. It had a 5-4 majority ruling where Mr. Heller kept his Second Amendment right.